This episode of the Turf District podcast is brought to you by the Edmonton Community Foundation. The foundation acts as a bridge between donors and charities to create a strong, vibrant community for generations to come. There is now a Dwayne Mandrusiak Legacy Fund to support amateur football. Dwayne left a mark on so many players, both with the football club and with minor amateur players. You can donate to the fund with a one-time or monthly donation at ecfoundation.org and search Dwayne Mandrusiak. We also have new pod shirts, and $10 from the sale of each shirt will be given back to that fund. Grab your shirt and support a great fund. Check out more information at ecfoundation.org. Enjoy the show.
Hey, fellas, we ain't gonna ever back down from nobody. I don't care who it is. This is a brotherhood. And if we stand strong together, we can't be denied. If one of us goes down, we have another, and another, and another that's ready to fight. So let's hit this field and bang them, bang them, bang them. Somebody light me up.
It's time to huddle up. It's the Turf District Podcast. Welcome back to the Turf District, where we huddle up to talk all things Edmonton football team and the CFL. We are a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. I'm Andrew.
I'm Superfan Mike.
And unfortunately, no Commissioner K this evening, but we do have an amazing guest. And I want to bring him in right away so that we can get the conversation started. From TSN 1260 and the originator of marinating in green and gold, better known as Jaimo to us, our friend Dave Jamieson. Welcome back to the Turf District.
It's great to be here, guys. And it's been far too long, and I know why it has been far too long, but when I'm in the Turf District, albeit virtually, it tells me that we're inching towards, hopefully, touch wood, some football here very soon at Commonwealth Stadium.
Oh, preach, my brother. That's what I want to. That's what I want to hear. That's right. Yeah. And yeah, welcome to the new iteration of the pod. We're for those people who had listened to us under the old moniker, they know how great your stories are. But we need to introduce you to a whole new brand of people tuning into the Turf District. So tell us a little bit. How have you been over the year? I know you've been doing radio for home, but how's the rest of things going on?
Well, things are fine, and I'm probably a lot like a lot of people who are working from home or have been working from home. Every day feels so eerily similar to the one right before it. Like there is a Groundhog Day effect, if you will, to kind of our daily existence, or at least mine. I know, it's not that I'm totally housebound, but it does feel, and again, working out of my back bedroom here in my so humble abode, you kind of go, okay, well, I'll walk the 10 feet to my office and I'll do what I do. And then the show will end. We're on the air from noon until 2, Monday to Friday. And then you do that. And there's some stuff to, look after the show. And then you kind of wander around. And it's not that life doesn't have a purpose. It still does. It's just, it feels very small. And
yep.
One of the things about working in radio or media, those that are fortunate enough to have jobs in it now, and that's for another podcast perhaps, is that it's going in and being part of something that is kind of can be invigorating and exciting on some days, and it's the camaraderie, and you guys know that in your workplaces, and I'm sure people listening to this know the same. You may not like everybody that you work with, but you're around them, and there's a dynamic and in a creative business that radio can be or should be, you feed off each other. And so when you're at home, you miss that.
I totally agree. And I know it's, you can have a lot of meetings online and those types of things, and you can have some fun in those things, but it is completely different than having that face-to-face conversation or that just off the cuff, what's going on in this area.
Sure.
I know I've been kind of lucky in the fact that with my job, I'm still going in. I still see those people and I have a little bit of connection, but I look at my 13-year-old who has seen very few people in the past year, and you kind of wonder, like, how are you doing? It's because like you said, otherwise it is Groundhog Day. The commute to school is walking up the stairs, and the commute to watching the hockey game is about 10 paces to the left. Like, that's really what we have left. Right. So, it's been tough, but it's nice to see faces like this and get a chance to reconnect over stuff that we love. And so I'm really glad.
I feel the same way. Back at you.
Well, thank you. I got to ask that I'm probably not you, Mike, but I'm pretty sure that you watched The Briar, right, Jaimo?
I did, yes. Yeah. Here's a little known fact, not that I would expect anything about my life to be a well-known fact, but I come from, growing up in Vancouver, my mother was a very, very serious competitive curler and traveled the province and played a lot of bonspiels and if I were better prepared, I would show you some of the things. She led a rink that had an 8-ender. Which, as you guys know, is very rare.
Yeah.
Get an 8-ender. Hole-in-ones are rare, but 8-enders require a whole bunch of stuff to happen, as you know, right? Yeah. Things have to land, and, got an 8-ender, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm the proud recipient of, I'm hoping it's all silver and very valuable. It probably isn't, but it's a margarine dish with her name emblazoned on it, Sybil Jamieson. So I grew up around curling. I've curled a bunch of times, not well. Certainly didn't get her gene on that, but yeah, I watched The Briar. I really chafe when people say, things about curling that it isn't this, it isn't that, it isn't. It was never meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. It's very detailed. It's also at the highest level. It's damn hard. It's also a very social game, and that's a great thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, and people can play it late in life. Like, I think that is one of the many redeeming qualities of curling. That's the one we should sort of go, God damn it, you can play this thing until you're very old. That's a good thing. But also, at The Briar, you're seeing the very best in our country, and because of that, some of the best in the world. It's hard, man. It's real hard.
I watch some of that stuff and think I would never be able to do that, but it just blows my mind. And the strategy, as I learned more about it and becoming kind of this ice-filled chess game, was amazing. Like, it's wild.
So precise. The level of precision in that sport is mind-blowing. The Briar does it. We see that in the Scotties, and all of. We get in our country lots of opportunity to see it, but I'm telling you, like the stuff at the Olympics. I don't know if you guys can remember back to the Olympics in Vancouver, and my late mother was there. Wasn't that very far from her home, and so it was one of the rinks she used to curl out of. So that when they go there, and it's like, and I would talk to her, and she's like, she knew curling, like could tell the real stuff, and I'm like, wow, it's. And I was watching it on TV, and it's like. It's high level stuff. It's not just the three of us going and having a few beer and throwing rocks up and down the ice.
Although that would be fun too.
Yeah, that's right. That would be a great deal of fun.
If we had enough beers beforehand, I'm sure they'd want to put it on TV. That's really how I figure that's how it works.
Or during. I think that you're talking about the 8-ender versus the hole-in-one. It does relate very much to golf in that you can play it much later in life. It's not a fast sport, much like, if you're watching hockey or if you're watching rugby or football. But it is very social. It is something that, I watched it. I thought it was great. I used to watch curling a lot, like religiously all the time. The Scotties, the Briar, everything. This year, I only got to watch the last day, so I got to see the 2 games that Alberta won, which was outstanding. And it was such a slow start; it almost seemed like it. Some people were calling it boring, but I thought it was just more of a simmer. Just seeing this chess match between this offense and this defense, and I thought it was outstanding.
If I may say this, I find the women's game more dynamic, and this is not that they're brilliant curlers. I think they almost take more chances and they push it a little harder.
There's more rocks.
The men are so clinical that it sometimes can lead to, a lot of blank ends and a lot of defensive, there's a lot of almost like boxing in a sense, when you're sort of feeling out and nobody's going for it. But I find that the women just go, all right, let's go, we're going to put up some points here. And I like that. It's fun. It's aggressive curling.
Yeah, I find that too with the mixed doubles. Like you see that a lot where there's a ton of rocks in play, and you're just like, "Holy cow!" It's hard to follow, right? But it's fun. It's fun to watch that. So, but congratulations to Team Botcher, which is from Edmonton, and that's exciting. And I'm glad he finally got one. I've been cheering for him for a long time, and I just love the way that team works together. I love it. Love watching it. So
and watching the other team almost sort of self-destruct.
Exactly. The imagery when they were getting the medals was rather stunning, actually. Anyway, we'll leave that for another time, and let's get into some football, shall we? Of course, the biggest question out there: if you could either have free tacos or free wings for life, which would it be? No, I mean, obviously, there's
that is Sophie's choice, man.
Can I answer? Do I get a chance to take a swing at that?
Yes.
I'll go wings, and I love a good. I mean, it's the I guess the greater of two, not evils, but good things. I will go wings because of the potential for variety. I mean, I like a good clean wing. Just a very simple thing. Or, I mean, if it's depending on the kind of night you're involved in, I mean, bib and the whole, you're down in it. It's a short yardage situation. Let's use that football term. It's short yardage with wings and a bib and alcohol. Sounds like a nice fine way to spend a night. But
sure does. As soon as we're allowed, I know what the three of us are doing. Okay, that's going to be the invite. Short yardage football wings. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Okay. Yeah. Now there was a bit of news out this week, and I know we touched on it on the YouTube Live, but I want to get into it a little bit here. CFL and XFL talking and how they can work together to grow the game of football. Now, lots of people jumped on to the Doomsday Merger Parade. Lots of other people, there's a ton of other opinions across the league, and of course the fans. But I mean, the one thing is, hey, we're talking about something in the middle of March. So I guess that's a good thing. But let's talk again. We'll just double back to this for the people who haven't watched the YouTube Live. Your gut reaction, what was your first thought when you saw that? And we'll start with you, Dave.
I was intrigued. I was intrigued to hear that the two sides had met. I don't know how they got together. I guess it really doesn't matter. Whether that was generated by Randy Ambrosie doing an outreach or the XFL going the other way, it ultimately doesn't matter. But at least there is a will to explore an opportunity for collaboration. Those are empty words. I know that as they're leaving my face. But at the end of the day, I don't want the CFL, and I'm not. The XFL is minutes old. I mean, it's a newborn in terms of the comparison to the where the CFL is. So my energy and my devotion, if you will, is to the Canadian Football League. So I did, like everybody, or I'm sure you guys, you go to, oh my God, what does this mean? Is this the end of 3-down football? What's going to happen to the jobs that are of young Canadian players. The CFL, for a lot of players who, for any number of reasons, that was the highest level they could aspire to. And it's a damn high level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It is the best league outside the National Football League. That's not a bad thing to hang your hat on.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I don't know about you guys, but if you said that the National Football League, and it is the undisputed world leader in playing of North American style football, and you said, well, what's the number two? You go, what's the Canadian Football League? It's been around for 100 plus years, and it's this and it's that, and it's got this rich history, and it's produced all these great players. That's not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Now, I know that we and the CFL, live in a different time when you don't shout from the rooftop, we're number two. But there is a place that they can reside, and they've resided, quite comfortably. When you're in football, and I was there for 14 years with the Edmonton football team, working, we'd have scouts come in. And they would come to games. And back when we could travel and people had those kind of budgets. And there was a gentleman named Jim Kreiner. Jim Kreiner was with the Kansas City Chiefs for a long time. He coached in the first XFL. And Jim would be a yearly visitor. And I got to sit with him, and I would do his pass up and meet him out, when he was parking, and kind of make sure he got looked after. And Jim would sit down, and this guy knew more football than God. I can't even believe I was in conversations with a guy like Jim Kreiner, just because but I was interested, and he was interested in who we were, and he knew the league, respected the league. And you're talking to guys like Bill Quinter, who was a long time with the New Orleans Saints. He coached in the CFL with BC, and he was also a scout. And meeting those gentlemen over the years, I was always struck by how much they respected the Canadian Football League, because they knew the quality. They're not caught up in nonsense we get into, like what's better and 3 downs versus 4 and the rouge and all that stuff. They just wanted to know, can a guy play?
Right.
Can you ball? Can player X ball and do what we need in New Orleans or wherever, Kansas City, wherever, it didn't matter. And so that was their job, is to find guys that can ball. And I thought, if people like this are traveling all this way, making their way across Canada and doing all of this stuff, then probably what we're doing is worthy of people's time, energy, money, support, and so on and so forth. But, we're 2021, and there's different questions to ask about the viability of the Canadian Football League and coming out of a pandemic, and even going in. There's soft spots. We know them, Montreal, Toronto, and that kind of thing. And coming out of this, and I believe the CFL will come out of this, but is it going to be a leaner and meaner CFL? Yes, I would assume so, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, where does the XFL fit in that? I don't know. I mean, they're going to have coffee. They're having more coffee, right? That's right. I guess I until we hear more, and they're doing up white papers and memorandums and all that kind of stuff, and The Rock is cutting ribbons in Toronto and stuff. We won't know what this looks like. But at this point, it's conversation to have more conversation. And that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all. Superfan, where did you land on this when you saw that?
I thought it was interesting when I first saw it. I had said on the YouTube live that when I first saw it, thought that was certainly a lot of potential. Cross promotions, maybe even players that you're not ready for your roster, so you can say it's one of the teams in the XFL and vice versa. Do you have room for this guy? We think he's really good. He just needs a little bit of seasoning. Lots of different potential for this kind of thing to work. And then I went on social media, and all hell had broken loose. Don't
do that, Mike. Here's a tip: don't go on the social.
No, never read the comments. Right? That's the rule.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, my phone was just lit up like a Christmas tree with all these alerts going off on someone has tagged you, someone has messaged. Like, seriously? Like, they haven't talked anything about this. And I mean, there's a great book on the CFL talking about calling it the Phoenix of professional football leagues, because it's died and come back so many times over the 150 years practically of football in Canada.
Right.
Like was it Mark Twain that said the reports of my demise are greatly exaggerated, and it's true about the league. I mean, it's been in trouble. I mean, we've heard a lot about 1987. We've heard a lot about the mid-90s when the U.S. expansion, how important that was. But I have to believe that we've survived this many years and this many crises that it wasn't going to be a problem.
Somebody is, I can't take credit for this, but we use the line, it's the cockroach of professional sports. You can kill it and step on it and think you killed it. And then you'll go, oh, it's still moving. Yeah, it's still moving. And that, to me, resilience, as much as anything, is one of the really enduring qualities of the Canadian Football League. And you may want it to be something else. You may hope that it's something else. But if you can find a way to really carve out a spot for yourself in the entertainment landscape and diet of what people want now, then you might be okay. But there will be people, and you guys know this, who will go, yeah, I remember when it was, Commonwealth was sold out. And you go, well, yeah, you and I, the three of us here on this show tonight, remember crowds of 60,000 plus. Yeah. Didn't happen a lot. But when it did, you went, whoa.
In the early 80s, it was a regular occurrence, though, when we finally
I think I heard it said it was the fourth largest city in the province.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's how big the crowd is. That's what a crowd like that looks. I mean, that's what it actually is. And so but those days are both nice as memories, but they're not where it is now. And so you have to figure out, okay, how can we operate in whatever now is, but not sort of throw your hands in the air and go, we it's hard work. I guess is the, best way I can. It's hard work, and keep in mind that we love this community. Turf District loves this football team and loves this league. But when you go away for a year, you went quiet.
Yeah. Right.
And when you go quiet, you can get forgotten. Sure. That's also one of the things about this XFL talk. CFL wasn't quiet for a few days. Now, can that happen every day? I doubt it, but it still means that there's life there in the CFL, to me.
Yeah. Well, no, there is obviously something to the talks. I mean, the XFL has decided to put their plans on hold for their 2022 season until they finish these talks. The CFL, obviously, they had all 9 teams announce at the same time that in their own words, to some degree, that they're having these talks with the XFL. So there's obviously something there, but I don't know if it's any more, like you said, Mike, than cross promotion and players across the leagues and maybe a group TV deal of some kind.
Sure.
But maybe it's a possibility for more of those Canadian kids to go and play in the XFL, like they have done with some of the other leagues. Like it could be such a wide range of what they're talking about that until we know what is it that you're talking about, I don't think that there's a whole reason to panic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. And I think that's a really nice assessment of kind of where we should all be, but we're not like that. We're not cool international like you. We are hot takes. We are, oh my God, sky is falling. What's this going to mean? And, I have tweeted this and said it on my show. I'm not in the group of give me 3 downs or give me death.
Right.
I just think that might be not the best position to be in right now until I know what I'm up against here, we're up against here in terms of what the future is going to be. Now,
as you say that, I have a couple of thoughts. One is there is another person out on the web that has said that maybe Maybe you didn't support the CFL as much as you should have by putting your name on a fan base or something along those lines. I think we all know who I'm talking about.
Which is funny.
Yeah. What did you have on that, Mike?
Well, the funny part is the money for the fan base didn't go to the league.
Correct.
So how are you supporting the league by putting your name on something when the money for that, the proceeds don't go to the league itself?
Correct. Yes.
So, and we've already had this whole Kevin Lowe Tears of Fans thing on who's more important than others. I hate to bring that up again, but, it's like, come on. Like, we've all spent our share of money on Canadian football, supporting the team, supporting the league. And you've brought up many times, as we have all brought up, that if they want to find out what the fans want, and the fans are screaming for things like CFL branded merchandise.
Absolutely.
Why can't I not buy a black shirt with a CFL logo on it, or a hat, or anything like that, where the money would go directly to the league? I don't get it.
Yeah, that was my big thing. I have been asking it, and every time that there's a chance that I get to stand in front of Randy Ambrosie, I ask him, so where are we at with some CFL merchandise? Because I have all of my money that I'm ready to give to you. Could you please put it onto a shirt or go back to something like Radically Canadian or Our Balls Are Bigger? Or I don't care. Just do something that makes me go, yes, please give me that.
And please tell me I'm here to take opposing views. I think the best marketing campaign that I can recall, yes, Our Balls Are Bigger was memorable and it's funny, and this is radically Canadian, but I think This Is Our Game and the video that they promotional video that they produced in support that really nailed it. And if you haven't seen it, it's out there on YouTube. And
we'll retweet it.
This is a league of Haji Razoulis and Buonos and on and on and on. And it captured to me, and some iconic images, obviously, of what the league has meant. But it also was, and I forget what year that was, if that was tied to the 100th or when it was.
Yeah.
Really captured where the league was to that moment. Now, we're several years removed from that, so I don't know whether the Canadianness of the players rings as loudly now in 2021 as it did, but there's something in, This Is Our League that still lives to me. Because that's really in essence what we're saying when we get defensive and territorial about 3 downs and the Rouge and all of the stuff that we trotted out when we heard this XFL news, which was no way in hell that, He Hate Me is coming up here and we're playing 4 downs.
Although he did.
He did come back up here.
On my show, it was, oh, yeah, okay, here we go with this 4 down stuff. And you're like, well, 4 downs kind of works down south, I've heard. Let's not slam every single door. And that's where I'm at, is walk this thing as far into the future as you can, Randy Ambrosie and the owners and whatever, because I don't know with certainty that coming back as the old CFL and just kind of, dusting off the dandruff from a year away and saying we're back is going to work for very long. I mean, there'll be a bump and a curiosity, and let's get back to it. Got to remember, I work for a company that is the single largest. TSN Bell Media is a pillar upon which the Canadian Football League stands.
We couldn't exist without TSN.
So I'm here to say I have a dog in the fight and a vested interest, and on behalf of the company I work for. But it's going to take some very creative. You want to protect what you can protect, but let's not do it at the expense of existing. And it's not hyperbole to say, the CFL is in that special moment where it's got to think, okay, how are we going to move forward and be sustainable?
Absolutely.
I always find it funny that people talk about they're so afraid of the Americanization of our game And I've got articles that are 100 years old where they're complaining about the Americanization of our game. If we didn't have all of these, it's like back 100 years ago, we were playing 14 men aside. The center didn't snap the ball back. He heeled it back. So we had two guys holding him up while he kicked the ball back to the quarterback. There was no forward pass. There was no blocking on anything, really. And in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, even into the 70s, they're all worried that we were just going so American. I mean, obviously, there's certain tenets to CFL football I would not want to change. Would not want to change the size of the field. I would not want to change the 3 downs. I wouldn't want to change the motion. There are just so many things that are so much a part of the fabric, and you couldn't change the size of the field and not change the number of players or maybe the waggle.
Of course.
But at the same time, it changes all the time. And the CFL has affected the NFL. You look at the NFL of the 70s and 80s, it's a very different game than now. And a lot of that is because it's introduced things that the CFL's had.
People in the NFL pay attention to the CFL.
Sure.
I mean, there's a reason. It's like an incubator in a sense. Okay, it's an incubator. And I'm sure you guys have either talked about it or talked to people say, well, why doesn't the NFL just come in and take over the CFL? Well, first of all, it doesn't need to because the NFL doesn't pay to develop its players. It's called college. And they just go, oh, you from Alabama. Thank you, Alabama, for developing this young gentleman for 2-3 years, whatever it is.
Yep.
Thank you, we'll take him now. So why would they buy a league to do what they kind of do already? But they can pick off the best of what the CFL has, Alex Singleton notably, and there's lots of others, and we know the history. And again, we don't have to go that far back to when the NFL was propping the CFL up with some money. I worked the 99 Grey Cup. I can tell you that the Hamilton Tiger Cats have never looked better wearing the Pittsburgh Steelers pants. And that's the truth because they got equipment from them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Given to them.
To get through. Yeah, absolutely. And I I don't know, every time I start talking about it, I'm like, well, again, we're there's a lot of pontificating going on, but I agree with you, Jaimo, is that the end game is, do we have football that we get to go and watch in Edmonton?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And I agree with Mike. I don't want a whole ton of changes to the Canadian game. Of course, I love the rules. I love the speed. I love all the wide fields, all those types of things. I guess in my other quiet moments, though, I thought, well, am I so tied to those that I don't that I'd rather not have? I have to go to a different game or have no game. like I don't know. And I don't know exactly where that is. Right. So I go back and forth with, I'd sure like to be able to at least still see my team in my stadium and enjoy that. Now, would I be super happy about it if all of a sudden we're all 4 downs? Well, no, but it's not like I couldn't get used to it. And if it was, do I think there's any chance at all that they would all go 3 downs? I don't think so, but it'd be interesting if that's not off the table. I mean, like you said, the XFL, if we're talking, pandemic terms, the CFL is old enough to get their vaccination and the XFL doesn't need a mask because they're too young. So, I mean, we're right. Like, we're at the point where maybe the XFL is going, hey, like, teach us how to do this. Who knows? Like, there's so many possibilities.
I asked the question on my show. I will ask it of you and the people listening to this. What does the XFL have to bring to the CFL and I throw this out here, it's not in the pejorative, other than the Rock's considerable clout in both his brand and social media and that sort of thing. And what does the CFL in turn have to give to the XFL? Because the supply of players, there is the factory that is football. If you want to use the image of this giant factory, and players are coming down a chute like the ones they have in the Costco's, where you put the money tube up and they go whoosh. Right. And there are players coming out of there down that chute constantly. So, and I don't want to get derailed talking about CFL 2.0, and I get the sort of the larger vision of Randy Ambrosi saying, if we grow the CFL brand and we become that league that, we're into Finland and Denmark, wherever, doesn't. But there are so many football players produced with not nearly enough jobs to go around.
Sure.
We know that it's really tough to make the NHL or the AHL, and we've got lots of hockey players in our midst here in this community. We know that. Imagine a football player. How many colleges play it?
Absolutely.
And try and crack the national football. I mean, it's just incredible. And so I don't know. Again, I come back to the question of I'm not sure who is giving what to whom in this relationship, who is outside of, again, the Rock's power and as a brand. But I don't want to be dismissive of certainly not of who he is. But at the end of the day, I mean, he can only go into Hamilton and say, "Can you smell what the Rock is cooking?"
Right.
So many times before, how does it tangibly change the experience on a week in, week out basis? I mean, I would say here in Edmonton, you bring in Shannon Sharp or Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
What did that do for the fan, you guys sitting in the seats, to say, "Oh, I need to bring two of my friends to come to this," and they tell two friends, right? The old shampoo commercial.
Right.
So that would be where I go, on all of this. I'm not discounting it. In fact, I'm, color me intrigued, color me interested, but I'm asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, our good friend Sean Spruill said maybe The Rock is just trying to get in there to finally get his revenge because he got cut from that other team we're not talking about, so he just buys it and cuts everybody. And that's no, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I kind of go more along the lines of what you were thinking there, Jaimo, is that, and BB Can Ryan said this too, is that I can't believe I'm agreeing with him, but it's maybe this is like a friends with benefits type of situation, right? Like maybe that's how this lands a little bit different than what we're all kind of worried about. So I'm excited to see what they come up with and what they announce, and then we can say, "Oh, I really like that," or "Oh, I could get used to that," or "Oh my God, they actually screwed everything up." And we don't know that until we know more, other than we're talking, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I know that Doug McLean, who was, of course, one of the original co-host of this podcast, as well as a good friend of ours, talked about, we know what the CFL can offer, or the XFL can offer to the CFL, but what does the CFL offer to them that is something that they can monetize? And I don't necessarily know what we can offer. I mean, you can offer legitimacy or legacy or whatever you want to call it, but I don't know if that's something you can monetize, right? So they can offer us money. They can offer us marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know what we give them other than, you've got 30 some odd million people in Canada, many of whom watch things like the Grey Cup and games every week. If you slip an XFL reference in there every game, maybe that'll help. I don't know.
Tom Wright, who I really loved as a commissioner, by the way, I think, and I'm paraphrasing here, but there's nothing that wouldn't solve the CFL's problems that an extra 50 million people in Canada.
Right.
And when you think about it, it's not, I mean, this is a league that goes not coast to coast, tries, and there's hope, right, for the Schooners. It's their pockets, and because of this vast land, but it doesn't have many places that could be. So the limitations. I mean, and we've lived with that for a long, long time, and I'm sure Farley Moat's written a book about it somewhere. But it's that's what it is, and to your point, like the exit. What does Canada, or CFL rather, have? I mean, you go to the Rock and you say, yeah, you know what? You'll have the market quarter in Hamilton, Winnipeg, and he's like, what? What does that do for us materially? They need to worry about getting a foothold in Kansas City and
Los
places
Angeles,
like that. With all much love to my country.
This is and the one thing that I thought of when I read that thing from Doug was they were saying, what can they offer? Well, I think you said earlier, Dave, that this is comfortably the number 2 league in the world is the CFL. And so those players, you cannot tell me that there are, and there is obviously a number of players that were in the XFL that are now signed up here to play with us. The Edmonton football team has 8 of them. And there is talent here in players that they could use in the XFL. Like, you cannot tell me that they're looking and going, you know, the backup quarterback on the BC Lions is better than the starting quarterback that we have in Seattle. Like, and when I watched the XFL the first time around, that was the huge thing for me, was that were a lot of, like, the quarterback play was probably the roughest part of the game. And and I looked at, when I watched this latest iteration, I thought, this is like a bunch of teams that are still in training camp and they just don't get the game yet. And it's going to take some time, but once they get the game, I think it'll actually be a decent game. And maybe what they need are those players. And maybe that's where that is something that the CFL has that they can offer back. And it'll be interesting to see if that plays out insurance wise and all those other things. So.
Right.
All right, perfect. Well, then that wraps that one up pretty well, I would say. So let's move on. Let's talk about our team, shall we?
Yes, please.
First thing, whenever we talk about player signings, this week we have a player that we need to talk about retiring, and Calvin officially calls it a career. Calvin McCarty, obviously friend of the podcast. One of the greatest guys and players that I've been lucky enough to know, and still one of my greatest memories with Calvin. Mike, you and I shared this one at the 2015 Grey Cup. We were there for the walkthrough, and so we got to watch them do the walkthrough. Then we go down on the field, and we're standing at midfield, and Calvin comes running out to see all the fans, like he always does, to come and see the people. And one of the guys that was there says, Calvin, oh, it's so great to see you. This is my first Grey Cup. And Calvin just looked at him dead in the eye, and he's like, mine too. And we laughed so hard. And then at the end of that game, he ran over to the sidelines after the confetti went and came over and walked right up to myself and Chad and, gave us a hug. And, and the first thing he said is, no, this is for you guys. Like, he was so happy to win, but he was everything for this team and this community. And, obviously we, wish him all the best. I can't wait to see what he's going to do next, but I'm sure you have Calvin stories, both of you. So, Jaimo, let's start with you and then we'll go to Superfan.
Well, I go back to an overcast day at Clark Stadium for a tryout. And meeting him there for the first time, and then and knowing a little bit about him, and we were in the old office, so you caught a lot of the talk between the coaches and the
Did you pick him up from the airport? Sorry, I just need to ask. Did you pick him up from the airport?
I didn't.
Okay, because he told this story this week.
I picked up Cavill, but that's another story on another night.
Okay, sorry.
And Arab and Justin. I also gave Arab and Justin a ride home from the airport. Nice. We stopped at McDonald's, by the way, just off White Avenue. But all of that said, Calvin McCarty, and when I talked to him on my show, and Cal and I I was there when he arrived, and here I am talking to him, after he departs. He was as honest a football player that I came across, and I say that in a way in terms of he never cut a corner. He worked terribly hard at practice. And a lot about a player who, when asked to play special teams, he's a very good fullback, great hands, underrated hands.
Yeah.
Great blocker. It's good fullbacks. They have to be, but not everybody loves the idea of taking on D linemen and linebackers and stuff. It's not fun. Like Calvin McCarty did, there's chopping of wood, carrying of water and all that stuff. That's where he lived in football. And so, but a guy who would run down on special teams and blow people up, like that's not for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not. If it were, then more guys would say, yeah, sign me up, coach. I'll go in on special teams. I mean, I still remember Riddell Anthony, a first-round pick in the National Football League, who came to camp for us. Mike will know the year. And this is a guy who like Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like this dude was a stud. Mm-hmm. And so we sign him, and he comes up here, and he'd been rinsed out of the NFL, and he came off after an offensive series, and it was, he's reaching for the Gatorade, and he's going to stand there and kind of chill. And somebody went, "You're not done." And he's like, "What?" It's like, no, you're out on teams. And he's like, "No, I'm not doing that." It's not like that's the thankless task stuff of football. And Calvin McCarty did all of that, did it for 13 years, showed up. We were laughing when we were chatting. He arrived when the Eskimos, Fine Jar, they were in a transition. You guys know what that looked like.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay? 1 in 05, Cal arrives in 07.
7.
Was that 07 the first? Yeah. Okay, we know what 06 was like. We know what 07 was like. It took a while to, kickstart the motor again and reboot the hard drive.
Yeah.
So he was there at the front end, and it was really, of all the people that I was pleased to see win a cup when they did in 15, it was him.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. What about you?
Riddell Anthony was 03, by the way.
Of course you would know that. Of course.
He wouldn't have made that team even if he'd been good.
Right. Yeah, that's what I just remembered because he came at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and everything else.
Right. Oh, trust me. Hey, you knew NFL guys by the way they carried themselves.
Sure.
He carried themselves like, do you know me? And I'm like, well, not really, dude. I'm sorry. I'm dealing over here with Jason Tucker. We're good over here for stars.
Yeah.
But tell me more about Tampa Bay, please. Yeah.
Oh boy, Mike, do you have a Calvin story?
There's tons of moments that I remember with Calvin. Just like you said, that walkthrough in 15. Mm-hmm. I remember right after that, I remember getting to talk to him just very briefly because, he would make time for anybody. But you knew he had to get back to the rest of the team. And just saying that I was saying to him that I was hoping that we'd win, obviously, as a fan. But it would just mean a lot to be able to see him, after all the years he'd been through, hoist the trophy. And he said, yeah, but I'm here winning it for you.
Yeah.
And it's just like he was just so selfless, right? And then for plays on the field, was it 2017? He had that one-handed catch and then dove in the end zone.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, that won they had all the different plays or whatever. That's the one that won, right?
Yeah.
He had hands, big time hands, and people, because of what he did, and his body type. The guy was he was a Smith. He was a container. He was a Smith Wright container as a human. So you go, he can catch, and you're like, yes, he can catch
as well as any receiver.
Him over the middle, and he just kind of suction cup the ball and then sort of tuck it in and kind of round his shoulders. I know, and I've seen Cal go flying over people and get, I wouldn't say blown up because I don't know how you would blow up someone who's built like him, but he gave, like when he was coming downfield, wow, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that.
He was in that time, was it 2008, where everyone was hoping that he'd be a bigger part of the offense, but he was just Machocha said he was too important on special teams to make a full-time starter, because if he went down, then that hurts both sides of both offense and special teams. And
Dwayne Mandrusiak, who should always get the last word on a lot of things when it comes to this, I loved his comment that Calvin McCarty is one of the very few players who could play in different eras.
Sure.
So could you not see him as a Neil Lumsden?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You just go through the time, and knowing if you want to start at the 70s, I'm old, but I'm not real old. Like I can give you 60s football, although I know the Eskimos weren't very good in the 60s. That I know. But that said, you could see Calvin finding a place in any era of football because of again the honest style and the work ethic.
Yep, lunch bucket.
Yeah,
just strapped on the helmet and you go to work. And
right.
I love Calvin. I know a lot of people have been saying that he's a for sure a guy to go on the Wall of Honor. I don't see that happening, just because of so many players that have been similar to that, where he's a huge fan favorite, but because of what he did on special teams, he didn't get the numbers. And
can I just add something here?
Yeah, of course.
As some, and I did have this opportunity to work on the induction of a number of players, John LeGrone, Rock, Fleming, and all of that. One of the defining characteristics, qualities, or requirements, depending on how you want to read it, of a Wall of Honor induction reads, and I've seen the parchment paper, the Dead Sea Scrolls of when that whole thing was started, is the work that player and the relationship to the community.
Yeah.
Okay, did that player stay here? Well, a lot don't, and we understand why. But when they were here wearing the green and gold and the double E, did they make a significant contribution to the community in which the team operates? And Calvin McCarty is that and then some.
Absolutely.
Fair.
And talking to him and interviewing him, I said, Cal, a lot of people they'll know you as a player, but for a lot of young kids in the city, young people now, they've grown up, they will know you as the guy who came in and spoke to them, either at an assembly or a PE class or an in-classroom visit from the Stay in School program and so on and so forth. And whether they went on to play football is immaterial. The fact that you were the guy, you were, in a sense, a defining figure for an organization for 13 years out there, not on the field, not, on TSN or wherever, on the radio. You were out there in the schools and interacting with the kids and the teachers and all that. That's impactful. Not everybody on the Wall of Honor, to my mind, I don't have a vote, needs to I think it needs to be a substantial, and I mean a really significant impact on the organization on and off the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know fullback doesn't make you go. I'll just bore you with one, and I hope I'm not boring you. But when we added John LeGrone, which was tied into the '60s retro night, thing that we did. Now, John LeGrone was absolutely, should be there, is there.
Should be in the Hall of Fame.
Should be in the Hall of Fame, but a great player in a bad time, bad teams in a dark period for the organization. And I remember talking to people going, and they're like, well, why are you doing that? And I said, because we're righting a historical wrong here, in my opinion, is that, and also tied in with what we were doing, but here was a guy that was overlooked for any number of reasons. And so they did it, and the organization did it. Now with Calvin McCarty, I don't know what the process is now to induct players. I'm not there. I haven't been for quite some time. But I would suggest that that there are, and if you don't have a wall, then may I suggest something like a contributor. Hugh Campbell is not on the wall, which boggles my mind. He's a contributor. I don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Isn't on the wall.
Dwayne Mandrusiak, you telling me he's not worthy of the wall?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Let's get real here.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I take a Calvin McCarty and equate him to similar to like a Jed Roberts. Jed is so important in the community. He still holds the record for most special teams tackles. And number 2, he has 50% more than the number 2 person, who's Matthew Bertrand. Like, I mean, like, it's
I'm going to do this to you
many.
guys. You're going to hate me. That's called a Gretzky in the special teams category.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
Like, it's just one of those things. And I've talked to him and he goes, there's no way I'd go up on the Wall of Honor. And I'm like, if it was up to me, there'd be someone like you, Ron Forwick, who's a guy that played again in the 60s. That maybe didn't get that. Howie Shum, Ted Tully. There's so many guys from the 50s and 60s that didn't necessarily get the numbers like that, but are so important. You can't have a team without guys that are the glue guys, right? And I think what he did on the field, what he did off the field, should he be recognized? 100%. Do I think he will get recognized? I don't think so right now. Maybe. I hope I'm wrong.
Keep in mind, just to further support what you're saying, this is a community-owned team.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Now, that you may say, well, at the end of the day, who cares what the ownership structure is? It's all about winning and losing and championships and so on. Okay, that's fine. But what we're talking about here are some of the things that speak to the fabric and the DNA of an organization, its relationship with the community, and guys like Jed Roberts. And I would, if I had a vote in this, I would second that because I was there for the tail end of Jed's career. And I know that he provided the fiber that connected a previous group of Edmonton players and then really kind of connected the Herveys and that group that came in and in the 99 and 2000, and then that paved the way for what we saw in 2002, which was disappointing, but that was a hell of a team, and then in 2003 and it became fully realized.
Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. Well, we as we've said many times, congratulations to Calvin, and I'm glad.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that he's staying here, and I was actually lucky enough to be part of the Pay It Forward with Football Zoom call this week with Calvin McCarty, which is great because then you get to hear his tone-low voice, and we had had some good laughs with him.
Cole Medina,
yeah, exactly, and he's going to do some great things with them as well. So we're really looking forward to it, and congrats, Calvin, for sure. Let's move on to some other signings that the team had. Nothing huge, but we did bring in wide receiver Jalen Tolliver. Now he's from the XFL Vipers, which of course is where our coach was. Elizondo was coaching there, so he knows him. I guess he was 4th in that league in receiving in the time that they had them. So hey, not so bad to bring in a guy like that. Linebacker AJ Hodgkins. Now that's so awfully close. Yeah, exactly. If he wears 27, we all know what jersey I'm. Anyway, okay.
Well, Tanner Green might say,
Yeah, probably not. And I'm probably going to get a Tanner Green jersey. We all know that. Okay. Defensive lineman Andrew Ankra, who was from the St. Louis Battlehawks. So that makes him good already. That's good. Defensive lineman Reggie Howard, who came from Toledo.
That's just a football name.
Isn't it? Reggie Howard?
Oh, yeah. That just sounds like it.
If it wasn't for the fact that we already had a Jimmy Gaines Award, it would be the Reggie Howard Award. Because it sounds like a new football player. Defensive lineman Matt Boson as well, who played a bit with the BC Lions. We did have a couple of releases, all guys that were kind of signed in the background and now released. Defensive lineman Justin Horton, linebacker Josh Banderas, defensive lineman Zach Barnes, defensive lineman Dwayne Beckford, and defensive back Chris Rayford are the ones that are listed by the team. And then, Mike, you found a few other things, including, unfortunately, the cat of one Mike Smith.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I thought it was interesting that of the 5 people that were cut since we last recorded, only one of them I've seen play.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And that was Zach Barnes, who was in the 2018 training camp.
Right.
And then he, I think, retired and then unretired in 2020, and obviously no season. But Banderas, we signed right in December of 2019. Dwayne Beckford was November 27th, 2019. And the other guys are 2020. So
these are all guys that, hey, we hardly knew ye. Yes.
Yeah. And listen, can we agree that if Banderas is not called Antonio, we're not doing our jobs? Like, there's just no way. I mean, that one, put it on a tee when he comes to camp and he's getting fitted, and you just say Antonio, and he's like, I beg you, my name is, and you go, no, today and starting today, it's Antonio, and you just settle in. Like, that's how nicknames arrive. Like, you just go, no, you don't get a say in this. And they're like, well, but that's not my name. I'd like you to respect it. And you go, no, not here. It's Antonio.
Yeah. I mean, you'd expect it from Brian Hall. But
yes. Yeah, Ricky Ray is throwing left-handed. Yeah. That's Stephen LaFours.
That's one of my favorite lines he ever had.
Oh, my. I'd just be calling him Zorro. That would have been fun. Like, hey, aren't you Zorro?
Yes.
Yeah.
So right now we got Justin Cates for a nickname. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
Your name's practically Justin Case.
Yeah, I get you.
No, we already have one nickname. We're all set up,
Rodney
right?
Smith.
Rodney Smooth. That's right. Yes, we're excited.
Autocorrect is a great thing.
Yeah, and the best part is he likes it. It's not nearly as funny as Hakuna Matata, but it's still, like, we'll find the names. They'll all come. We know they're going to be there. That's how this works.
Yeah.
Before we sign off tonight, we have to do some stories with Uncle Jaimo, because that's what we do when we have you on.
Sure.
Jed Roberts asked us to ask you the difference between wine versus wine. And so
there's wine, and if I may, wine, and then there's wine. Wine is that's heavy combat stuff. That is, the night has taken a turn, and you are now into, again, a short yardage situation. And you are faced with wine. You know what I'm saying? It may come from a box. It may just be in an open pail. And I don't know how, you might be just reaching your hand in and bringing it up to your face, or you've got a solo cup, but it's wine. That is how, and that is, again, that's the night is either gone, it may have gone very well, depending on where you're at in the evening, or it's a bad place. And that's the last thing you sort of see before the lights go out. Oh, yes. I'm well aware of wine. I know wine.
Sounds like the tailgate needs to have more wine. That's
that would be, you know what? That would be the last tailgate, and then we shut everything down. It's sort of like, we would be saying, do you remember that tailgate where we had wine? And you go, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it didn't go very well. No, it didn't. And there are no more tailgates.
I was going to say the answer is, I remember most of it, but I remember that I don't drink wine anymore. Yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah, exactly. You carved a new path for yourself following that night. I've heard of those.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so then the next one I want to talk about, I'm going to do a little plug here for us. We have brand new podcast T-shirts that have the Turf District on them, and we're selling those. We have all sizes from extra small all the way to 3XL. And if you heard that off the top of the show, of course, $10 from every shirt is going to the Dwayne Randrusiak Legacy Fund for Amateur Football through the Edmonton Community Foundation. I'm sure you have a good story about Pops.
Oh. God.
How many good stories? Yeah, he's our favorite.
Let me. I've got a bunch. I don't know if I've told I maintain that Dwayne, in my time there, Dwayne made one mistake. The one mistake that was sort of visible, and that we went to Regina, and we were playing the dreaded Rough Riders. Doesn't matter. It was a regular season game, as I recall. Blisteringly hot night. Regina was either windy in a way that is inhumane to everybody, or it was pulverizingly hot. Like, I didn't know any other sort of variant or way that place could be. Anyhow, we went there, and I got a call, or, back then I probably had a flip phone, and Dwayne said, "Hey, we got an issue with a player number." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm, nearby, and I'll come in and see you." Well, Ed Hervey's number 81 had not been packed. Okay.
Oh.
So they were having to scramble to find a new number for Ed. And so I arrive, and Dwayne is there with Ed, and Ed's a dear friend, and we love him a lot. But in game mode, Ed could be intense.
And you don't say.
Yeah, just a touch. And I arrive, and there's Ed, all these, 6 foot whatever, and he's in we're in the white pants back then, which was a great look. The white pants, and he's standing there in the locker room, and I think it's just Dwayne and Ed. And Dwayne's explaining to him, like, "Hey, dude, I'm going to have to go with this tonight, 6. You're going to have to wear 6 for this game." And Ed's sort of standing there, and clearly he's at 81 for a long time. And then Dwayne goes, "But Ed, think of it this way. Single digit, it'll make you look so much slimmer." And I am just like, I am biting my lip witnessing this. I'm like, well, being slim would not have been the biggest issue for Ed Hervey. He was pretty trim at the best of times. But anyhow, it was great, and he ran out. I forget what he did that night, but I had to advise, Halsey, so we didn't call him Quincy Cole Carter or whoever. And so I had to advise, the TV people. Anyhow, all of that stuff. But I just love that line. But hey, it's single digit. It's slimming. I thought that was great. But you ask for stories. There's so many. Dwayne on a sideline in a tight game. I would come down late in the game or whatever it was. Would have a line that would make you laugh. He could break attention. He could read a room, read a scenario. Like, what did not just the players require, but what did the coach require in that moment? It could just be sliding up and listening to a guy bitch about refereeing or whatever it was. And so it was an innate ability to understand the people who were under a lot of stress, what they needed in the moment to job the best of their ability, and also a great deal of empathy. And I have told this story in different ways and in different places about guys would come in to the locker room, and they were, and I would drive sometimes the shuttle and bring them over from when they were on Kingsway, staying there, and bring the guys over and get them fitted and whatever. And so you'd get them to the room, and they would line up, and they would go in to see Dwayne to get fitted for pads and helmet and all that kind of stuff. And listening to Dwayne talk to these guys, okay, who had arrived, and some had great experiences wherever they were. Maybe they were stars somewhere else, but just making them feel like they were part of, I'm going to say it, the Eskimos from their day they arrived. They might have been there 6 days. They might be camp casualties, guys that got dinner on Delta. But Dwayne treated them like they were Warren Moon or Dan Kepley. Wow. They were just, once you crossed the threshold and you came into Commonwealth Stadium, you were part of that group. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter if you were a 10-day guy, 2-day guy, 10-year guy. You were wearing the green and gold. And I learned, and I will say this now, I'll say it as long as I'm drawing a breath. I learned more about football, not the X's and O's and how the game's played. I still don't know what the hell's going on out there. I mean, it's all baffling to me. I mean, somebody has a ball, they throw it, somebody catches it, and people cheer. But how to be in that environment and support those who are playing and coaching. I learned everything from Dwayne just watching. And sometimes he would slide over and go, hey, but if you paid attention, you were in class. Teacher was teaching. You just had to pay attention.
Absolutely. And I know that was always one of our favorite parts of training camp is Dwayne comes over and, here's the latest stories. Okay.
Yep.
just sit down and, just tell us.
Like tonight.
Exactly. Exactly. Just tell us more because, he always had the great stories.
Now I got to rewatch that game in 2003.
Yeah.
Where Herbie was wearing 6.
I don't know if that was the Hayden Epstein getting it blocked. I can't. They all become a blur. I remember the people in Regina. God, and they're wonderful people, each and every one of them. I was just actually sharing this a few nights ago with Dwayne. I remember one night because I'd start the game in the press box and do whatever running around I had to do, and the game would start. And sometimes it would make my way down depending on what happened. Then at halftime, I had to get the coach to the TSN interview and just kind of general kind of housekeeping. But sometimes, third quarter or I would kind of wander, and at Mosaic, you had the long walk of shame from you came out our locker room, you hard left and around down the sideline. You came out in the rider bench.
Yeah.
So, I'm this, guy in my bad khakis and green and gold golf shirt. So I come out and I hard left and I'm down the sideline and I'm walking and I'm by myself. So I am alone. Take me, Regina, and do with me whatever you feel you need to do. And so people are just shouting stuff, and I can hear, things being yelled at me, and I'm like, okay, that's great. At least you're not throwing stuff like in Calgary. And I make my way sort of through the end zone by the band, the famous rider band. They're, honking and bleeding and doing whatever they do. And a guy yells, "Hey, are you the doctor?" And I look, and I'm like, no, I'm not the doctor. Do you need one? And he's like, no. And I said, and I'm not the doctor. And he goes, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm the PR guy. And he goes, I can't say the word on the podcast, but then he just basically tells me to
fire trucker.
And I stood there and I'm like I am just walking to go over to stand by the kicking net. Why are you angry at me? It was just one of those sort of moments, It's like, God love you, Regina.
It's like Philadelphia. It's just, you're not with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm just reaching to plug in my computer here. But, I remember David Archer one night. They had hung, so as you guys know, Dave, the fans had a hard time sort of, getting on board with Dave in 98. And there were a couple of people who hung some signs from the upper deck. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I'm standing on the sideline with Dave, and we're looking up at them, and I forget what they said. It was pretty mild. I mean, David Archer had been a Philadelphia Eagle, so he's played in a stadium that had a jail in it. So Dave's seen some stuff go down in his day. And I'm looking at the sign going, God, I mean, how does that make you feel? And he looks at me like, dude, I played for a team where they threw batteries at us. Like, well, okay, I guess so. Two guys holding a bed sheet that says David Archer is not as good as Kerwin Bell. You're not too worried? And he's like, yeah, I'm good. I think I'll survive this. Thanks. Well, I was a rookie, right? So I was super sensitive. I'm thinking Dave's probably had knife fights in the dressing room and all. I mean, it took me a while, right?
You put someone through a table later, so I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yes. You remember that? John Sexsmith and I are good friends. Right. And we still will talk about the night that was it Glenn Rogers Jr.?
Yeah, I think so.
So I don't know if I've shared this. So he gets tossed out of the game. I'm down on the field. And it's, again, I'm like, it's my rookie year. I don't know what I'm doing. And I go to, we know what happens. And Glenn Rogers Jr. gets thrown over the scorer's table. And I forget, I think it was John Sexsmith made some crack about it on the PA. And Hugh Campbell fired him or something. I don't know what happened. Anyhow, all of that said. And I go in the dressing room, and it's just Archer and I. So he gets tossed out, but as he's going off, he gave the finger to the knothole gang.
Right.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why not? Double down. You're going to double down on the
I guess.
problem. And so he did that, and it, I mean, hey, why not? So we get in the room, and it's the two of us. We're sitting there, and I said, well, I'm trying to make conversation with this quarterback who's, drenched in sweat. He's been chucked out, booed out of the stadium. And I'm like, wow, that didn't go very well, or something like that. And I said, now, do you want me to do something with the media? Like, Dave, should we make a run for it now? We'll get in your car and we'll drive away. He's like, no, open the door, man. I screwed up. And I thought, and it was an early lesson for me, selfishly, about accountability and, being a professional and sort of wearing whatever may have come. I mean, David Archer at that point in his career, I mean, it wasn't like he was, had 20 more years ahead of him. He was on at the end, but I remember that distinctly. And I don't have a lot of stuff from my time, but David Archer signed a program for me, the one that was the first program of that season, where he's on the cover looking very handsome and, and the Eskimo stuff, and it was all very posed and all that. And he signed a program for me, which I still keep, which means a great deal to me, and certainly given that night that Glenn Rogers Jr., God, that was a tough day at the office for sure.
Yeah, that's back when Rogers was with the Lions.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so it kind of sounds to me like Archer was Twitter before there was Twitter. Like, just double down on everything and just that's it. I don't care what you think. I'm saying what I want.
When Ottawa, when the Red Blacks came back, I talked to Dave. I called him at the radio station in Atlanta because he's color on the Falcons radio broadcaster. I think he still is. And so we had him on the show, and it was so great to connect with him again. I mean, he's very smart, very funny guy. And he spoke so highly of his time in Ottawa. But yeah, that was David Archer, man, we had some beauties in that 98 year, right? From Kay Stevenson on out. We were taking the world by storm, huh?
That was a fine year.
Yeah, well, there was a storm anyway, but I don't know if we're taking anything, but there was definitely a storm. All right. Well, before we finish off here, I just got to say this episode is also brought to you by the great shows on the Alberta Podcast Network. We've had some great new additions to the network. You can check out Real Learning with Real People, hosted by Ken King. He has unscripted conversations with people that are grinding to get the most out of life. Ken talks to anyone from athletes to astronauts, and all the other letters as well. I know I just put A's in there, but a recent episode even had Dr. David Legg, who is the past president of the Canadian Paralympic Committee, and about building deep relationships. So there's lots of variety and lots of real talk. Check that out and all the other great shows at albertapodcastnetwork.com. There we go. Okay. Jaimo, we love when you come on. Thank you so much for joining us to talk all things football this week, and of course going through all of these things as we do have big news topics. It's awesome to get your perspective and talk to you about these things. Tell everybody where they can find you and catch up with all of your other wonderful things that you have to say.
At Jamieson 1260 is where I tweet from. I probably should be a little more diligent on it, but at Jamieson 1260. And you can hear me from noon to 2 weekdays on TSN 1260, Edmonton Sports Leader. And we also have a Edmonton football team pregame and postgame show when the season is on. So that's a great place to go. Sometimes I pop in there and join the guys in terms of getting ready for a game or breaking it down after. But that's where you can find me. I probably should have a TikTok account where I can dance provocatively. I don't. But maybe,
or does he?
I feel I can monetize that. And I'm sure when new platforms come up, I will ignore them. But all of that said, at Jamieson 1260 and at TSN 1260, noon to 2, Monday to Friday.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Superfan, where does everybody find you after all that?
Yeah, I gotta follow this.
I know. I'm excited for you to announce your TikTok account. Yes, that'd be great.
I do have a TikTok account. I've never used it.
Oh, okay.
But I made sure to get 56 Parkies on that as well. So
well done.
Basically, anywhere you can look for me, just look for 56 Parkies.
Perfect. Of course, you can find Commissioner at Duchess Lombardi, and you can find everything about the show, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at the Turf District. I do want to mention as well, just make sure you're checking out the History Wrangler shows that they're coming out every Friday. We do have some history pieces in there that Mike and I are both reciting. We are working on hopefully making some more of those as well. And of course, lots of great shows coming out from the Canadian Football Podcast Network. And I know like the ladies from Mouchoir put out one today. So catch up with them as they talk all things CFL, XFL, because it's a news thing or something. We're all talking about it. It's weird.
It's weird.
I know. Yeah. Check that all out. So we will be back in 2 weeks. We're going to talk any new signings and whatever other CFL news that may come out in a couple of weeks. And we're excited to get back at it. And again, if you could do us a favor and just share the link, leave a review, find a way to get this back into some other people's minds and hearts, that would be wonderful. We're excited to talk to everybody and join in the conversation on all of our social spots. So for Commissioner K, for Jaimo, of course, Superfan Mike, I'm Andrew. Remember, you can't catch footballs with your face, and we will absolutely talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.